Well, for the moment, markets are not going anywhere. Nifty, I won't say struggling, but Nifty is jumping in the same place. Markets are consolidating, but they're consolidating rather beautifully. What amazes me is Vanke's 7 days of linear price action. It's turning out to be like the go-to stock for a trader. The investment ownership or the institutional ownership for Venky's is not large, but this stock is now surging on extraordinary strong volumes. The other F&O gainer is also Voltas, which in the F&O market seems to be trending up very smartly. Well, we've been telling you that you should start focusing on pharma companies which are large but do not derive a very large percentage of the total portfolio from the US generic market, and one such company is Cipla. So what is the way forward for Cipla? How is the non-US business shaping up for Cipla, and how realistic are these price war concerns which in a sense have plagued pharma industry for 3 or 4 quarters now? So to discuss all that and much more, let's connect with the CFO of Cipla, Mr. Kedar Upadhye. He's the CFO for the global business as well. Kedar, good morning and thank you for joining us. Now, Cipla recent results have been pointing to an higher operating leverage cycle led by a pickup in US markets. Have you realized most of it, or can we expect more to come?
Yeah, I need to say that as the revenue growth in US and other markets picks up going forward, I think additional benefit of operating leverage would kick in. But yes, a large part of that is already reflected in the Q3 numbers.
So how is the US pipeline looking for next 1 year? Is the company profitable yet in the US markets?
Our view on the US market is a bit different than other players. There is a talk about channel consolidation, there is a talk about pricing erosion. We look at US market a bit differently because our base in US is a little bit lower than our peers in India. That's why the market is pretty attractive for us. And in fact, as we are speaking, within Cipla, various functions, sub-functions which help, target the US opportunity, they are working very closely hand in hand, be it, supply chain, regulatory, quality, manufacturing, operations. And the pace of launches will increase going forward. If you know, historically, our ANDA filings in US used to be in single digits. Last year, we have filed more than 30 ANDAs. This year, we would probably close a little bit upwards of 20. And in the coming years, this would get monetized. So yes, the total number of launches in US will increase going forward. What will also happen is the differentiated limited competition kind of launches will also go up. So what is important is both the quantity as well as the quality. Recently in Q3, you have seen our announcement of having launched generic versions of budesonide and decitabine, and we are pretty looking forward to scaling up these two products in the coming year.
Okay. Strong launches in the US markets as well is what you've seen. Is that the main trigger for the company for the next 4 to 5 years?
Yes, and US is only one market, obviously. We are also quite dominant, as you know, in Indian market. We are the third largest company in sales in Indian market. We are the third largest company in our South African market as well. So while from a low base standpoint, the percentage growth in US would look higher, but there are levers in the organization which are beyond US market. I would expect we call as home markets, which is India, South Africa and US, to do really well. So the levers for growth and profitability at the company level are beyond US as well.
Kedar, the US FDA is giving more approvals for the same drugs. Is that a positive trigger for a company like yours, which is trying to make its strong foothold in the US markets?
I think so. Faster approvals and more approvals for a company like us is always a positive. Although it does shrink the value of opportunity, which we saw in the generic version of sevelamer, which was supposed to have been our key product. It didn't pan out that way. So it will work out both as advantage and disadvantage. But as long as we focus and target a very niche set of launches, I think it will continue to be positive. On the current annualized run rate of about $400 million, I am hopeful, and I think we should target growth of 20% in the coming year.
So how will R&D spend change as companies increase their plan to grow faster in US, or is majority of the investment for a big growth is behind Cipla now?
Yes, as you know, we have what 90 plus ANDAs pending for approval, which will get launched in the subsequent years. But some of the investments in clinical trials are underway. So some of the respiratory filings in US, as we are speaking, the work on that is happening, and you could expect the R&D spend to go up by a percentage point. I think currently we are spending about 7% to revenues. My hunch is going forward for a couple of years, we would go up to 9% to revenues, and this is the investment we feel is worthwhile to do because the reward is worth the risk.
So how is the inhaler launch faring in the US market, and when should one expect to see the filing of Advair in US?
In our view, opportunity in the US is a bit more meaningful than the Europe because the European innovator and generic prices are quite lower than US, but we will continue to focus on both the markets. You have heard of our FPSM launch in Europe about a year back, and we will focus on scaling it up in UK and few more countries within Europe. Advair for US market, the generic version, we have just started the clinical trial, the protocol finalization, site, recruitment, everything is happening as we are speaking. So it will take about 1.5 years to complete the trial, post which we will file and then look forward to launching the market.
Right. Kedar, can you elaborate on the answer on the inhalator pipeline being more meaningful in the US as compared to EU? Because analysts still believe that EU is a bigger market for you.
Well, in terms of the overall opportunity size itself, the US is quite bigger than Europe. That's the reason, in our view, US is more meaningful.
Okay, so what's the outlook then on South Africa? Because you seem to have been doing fairly well there in the last 2 to 3 years.
South African market, we have a very capable team in South Africa. In the last 2-3 years, both from the market position as well as profitability, we have done significant work. Since we have a very dominant position, it allows us to do market shaping initiatives. And that's the reason we are continuing to do well. We are quite positive about South African market.
Now with IPCA coming back in the southern markets or South African markets, how do you see the institutional business and the African business moving?
I won't comment on the competition, but our ability to win tenders at our threshold level of profitability has been demonstrated quite successfully over the last several years, and we would like to believe that we continue to do that as well in the coming years.
Can you talk us about the Indian markets? Have the Indian markets over the last 2-3 years seen issues of drug price control, GST? What has been the impact?
In my view, yes. We do understand government's priority and intention behind bringing additional drugs under price control. In a country like India, affordability is very much a priority, and we acknowledge government's intention in getting more drugs into price control, and we have been able to sort of deal with it in our own fashion. As far as GST and demonetization is concerned, I think the way it panned out was there was one-time destocking in that particular quarter. After that, I think market has moved on, and we have been outperforming compared to the market. We would like to believe that if the market is somewhere between 8 to 10% in the annualized growth, we would be outperforming the market consistently. And as you know, our therapies in which we operate, we are pretty dominant. So be it respiratory, be it urology, be it cardia. We are getting into now diabetes through in-licensing. So yes, Indian market is a very dominant market. We would like to maintain our dominance in these key therapies.
Okay. Lastly, we, Kedar, speak with a lot of Indian MNC pharma companies as well, which have spoken of growth in the Indian markets till 2025-30. Can Indian pharma see double-digit growth for more than 8 to 10 years? What would you concur?
Very much. I think from a market growth standpoint, I think the numbers of people who have not been diagnosed effectively or underdiagnosed, and the lack of adequate reach in the rural country, in the rural part of the country, I think a double-digit growth is very much possible. Well, it can be between 8 to 10%, but a consistent 8 to 10% growth over the next several years is very much possible in our view.
Okay, Kedar, pleasure speaking with you. Thanks so much for taking the time out and, really talking to us about what's going on with the Indian pharmaceutical industry, where you see growth coming in from both the domestic as well as the international markets.